There's a squeaky floor underneath my chair, so we'll see how that factors into the recording. But this is Tristan Roberts with the Quill Nook experience at Quill Nook Farm. And I'm here today with Allison Paradise. And Allison, I'll let you introduce yourself, who you are. Who are you?
Oh my. How do you start with such a complex question?
I could say, how might people know you? Let's do this. How might people know you? And how might you imagine yourself being known 10 years from now?
People may know me from my work with the nonprofit My Green Lab, which promotes sustainability in laboratories in the scientific community. In 10 years, I'm not sure that I care whether people know me, but I'm hoping that they know this idea that I've been working on, which is to provide an experience of empowerment to children and young adults, to bring them back to their authentic selves, and for all of us to better understand our limitless potential.
Why is that important to you?
I mean, that's sort of like asking why we need to drink water. I mean, it's essential. Right? Our understanding our limitless potential is essential for us to realize our nature as humans. And the work with children in particular feels essential because, well, anybody who's listening to this as an adult is surely aware that so much of our behavior is automatic. It's a result of us running what I would say are a bunch of programs that we may have adopted, or routines, or habits, or behavioral programs, cultural conditioning, all of these things that cause us to behave in a certain way. So we have really almost no freedom in our own behavior. We have no choice.
Hold on, no. I think people would say, I feel like I'm free. I feel like I make choices every day. Yeah, my life is, I made compromises. I have kids to take care of. I have a job to do. My life isn't rainbows and unicorns, but it is what I make of it, and I go about it every day the best I can, and I'm doing fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, I mean, that's great. I'm not going to dispute that if that's how you feel. I would just say maybe if you dig a little bit deeper, you might see another perspective. And if I take something really simple, the example I used to use, which I think is quite simple, is breakfast. How many people listening eat breakfast? And if you ate breakfast this morning, what did you eat? And almost certainly, if you live in the United States, you ate something that was either cereal or a bread product or eggs or some sort of meat, a typical breakfast. You probably didn't eat raw fish, right?
No, I didn't. Don't remember eating raw fish for breakfast ever.
Well, why not?
That's weird.
Exactly. But if you grew up in Japan, it would be very weird to eat cereal for breakfast. So you see, it's not exactly a choice. It feels like a choice because you have 10, 15 different options for breakfast. But in actuality, you have infinite options for breakfast. But most of them never enter into your awareness. And that's what I mean by limitations and kind of a lack of freedom. Mm-hmm. True freedom would be, I wake up in the morning and my body craves, I don't know, seaweed. And I eat seaweed.
So I think, Allison, I really resonate with a lot of the thinking that you do, but I want to I think you and I both also struggle with we have some thoughts that we think are useful, and we're trying to figure out how to communicate them in a way that other people might think they're useful.
Yeah.
So I want to challenge you a bit here. So I'm very happy eating eggs and toast for breakfast. It's perfectly yummy to me. So I feel like, okay, I get that we have culture, and I wasn't raised eating raw fish for breakfast. I like it. I like sushi for dinner. So, I'm pretty a flexible guy. And I'm a liberal person. I'm open-minded. I just like the things I like. And when you talk about limitless potential, that seems kind of vague. And again, I'm happy with my breakfast. I'm pretty happy at work. What can you say to make me kind of tune in to what you're offering, or what difference can you make in my life?
Okay. Let's take it then to another level, right? Because you're right, breakfast is simple. It illustrates the point that maybe we don't always have choice when we think we have choice. But where it becomes, well, I would argue that breakfast is still important because of nutrition, but let's take it to a place where it actually might feel more impactful. And this, I'll just share a story from my own life. When I was 3, my mother bought me a book that asked a lot of questions about my life, including what I wanted to be when I grow up, which I think is a standard question for most of us when we're 3 or 4. And I immediately said, teacher. And she crossed it out and said, no, you can't be that. Pick something else. Which is confusing as a 3-year-old. So I don't remember what I chose. Something else, probably ballerina or something. This went on for years. Every year at the end of the school year, she would bring out this book and it would ask the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you can see it. I write teacher, she crosses it out. And over time, it changes. I mean, I added things, piano player, and definitely ballerina was in there at one point, and I don't remember what else, but those sorts of activities, the things that my parents had enrolled me in, became the things. And then around the age of 12, I think I finally got the message, and it switched to neurosurgeon. And then that became the thing. And everybody in my town rallied around me. They were so supportive. I grew up in a very small town in Connecticut. My parents were incredibly supportive. The town was incredibly supportive. I went and worked at a hospital as a volunteer when I was in high school, and they let me do surgery because they wanted to support my wanting to be a neurosurgeon. There was everything in the universe that was helping to support this dream of mine. And I didn't remember that I had said I wanted to be a teacher anymore by the time I was 16. So I would have said, this is what I want. I thought it was what I want. I thought it was what was in my heart. I didn't recognize that that was conditioned upon me because I didn't remember any of those conditionings. Then I go to university, and by my sophomore year, I'm so sick every day with these stomach pains. Inexplicable stomach pains. I go to see doctors. Nobody understands what it is. All these tests, nothing comes back. And that summer, between my sophomore and junior year, I went to Spain. And I got away from everybody and everything. And at that time, there were cell phones, but I wasn't obligated to have one. And the internet, I didn't have a personal computer, so I just had to go to internet cafes. So it wasn't that easy to keep in touch. And I started to write. And the question I asked myself was, how did I get here? And why does this feel so wrong when everything's supposed to be so right? And of course, it was during that process that I came to see this wasn't a choice. It felt like a choice. It felt like what I wanted, but it wasn't actually a choice. It was a culturally conditioned sort of narrowing of a path. And within that narrow path, I chose neurosurgeon. But in my heart, I'm a teacher, not in a classroom, but like a guide and someone who wants to share their experiences with people. So that's why it matters, because if you are so far from from who you actually are and what your purpose on the planet is, then it causes all sorts of issues, illnesses in particular, right? Physical, mental, emotional problems for people.
But doesn't it also cause stress to make a big life change? You got to a point in your life where you had a lot going for you. Was it, I've been there too. I've been at a point where in my life where I had a lot going for me on the surface, but it wasn't, there were some really large no's in my mind that I wasn't able to say out loud for various reasons around my emotional development in childhood. And I'd like to say that like I heard that internal no and was able to say it out loud in a graceful and clear way, and everyone in my life understood the message, and we empathetically sort of deconstructed parts of my life that then had to move, and everyone came out whole and well. But I've had a rocky number of years going through a reckoning, a bit like what I think you just described facing up to. And itself feels like honestly, I think there's like a obstacle.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my gosh, I'd like to say yes to my deepest inner self, but the costs seem high. The fear factor is high.
Yeah. Well, fear is another thing that's culturally conditioned. Think about it when you were really, really small. And if you watch children, you see this. Most very young children don't have fear. They're fearless. They run headlong into everything. And another example that I like to give around this is with kids who learn to walk. I love watching kids learn to walk, because how much fearlessness does that take to get up off the ground and pull yourself up and start moving your legs and then fall flat on your face and do it again and again and again.
Yeah. And I remember when Felix was learning to walk and he'd fall on his face, we really trained ourselves. Don't cry. Don't be like, oh no, are you okay? It's just normal. Learning to walk is normal. You fall flat on your face sometimes. You get up, you keep going. And he did not cry.
Exactly.
In that process.
Right. But we now, if you fast forward to now you're in a job and you have to leave it, or you have to tell people that you don't want to do this anymore, that's no different than falling down when you're walking. It's just now we've been culturally conditioned to think of that as scary, to value the social norms around money and status and what other people think of us and all of those things that are going to be torn away when we make these big changes. And that's why it's so difficult. But all of that is just a construction of our mind.
Hold on.
It's not real.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to push back again here.
Sure.
Like, I got divorced. It was embarrassing. I got fired. It was embarrassing.
But why?
Because it just feels like there's so much judgment, and I know from lost relationships that there is, and that sucks. It's scary.
Why does it matter what other people think?
Well, I'm speaking for myself in terms of I'm trying to be sort of more enlightened than that. Oh, I don't care what people think. It feels more enlightened, but the reality is, for myself, most of my life, I've had a just real fear of being abandoned. And when you're a baby, you're a child, and to be rejected is life and death. Or even when you're an adult, our genetics, as coming down from the animal kingdom, sort of in our tribal makeup, is if we're pushed out of the tribe, that's life and death. So to me, my body, there's a connection of fear of rejection to I'm going to die. Okay.
So this is such a great example. Because you have this deep-seated fear, right? You make decisions to assuage that fear, and therefore would probably have stayed in a marriage longer than you should have, so that you didn't feel these other feelings of rejection. right?
Yes.
None of that is a choice. All of that is to protect yourself. You're not able to live freely if you're constantly having to hold yourself in and protect yourself. And I'm going to say that honestly, that argument of, or that line of thinking that it's somehow we're genetically predisposed to want to belong, I don't know that that's true, because I don't have that at all. I genuinely do not care what people think. People say all sorts of things about me. and I'm sure listening to this will say all sorts of things about me. And it doesn't matter to me at all, because I don't have a need to be seen in a certain way. And that all of those things impact and influence our behavior, which bring us to places where we do not make choices where we're true to ourselves. I got divorced, and I went through that feeling of, oh, I'm somehow a failure. And then I went and I wrote about it, and I said, why do I feel like I'm a failure? I know this marriage isn't where I'm supposed to be. So why would I feel like a failure? So I start writing about all the things that my mother and usually my mother would say about what it means to be married and why divorce is so awful and there are no divorces in our family, and on and on and on, right? And I looked at that and I asked myself, well, okay, is it true? And that's the question, right? We have a cultural way of thinking. Is that actually true? Is it a failure? Or is it perhaps a failure for myself if I stay doing something that isn't true to me? And when I saw it like that, I thought, no, I reject this. It's not true. It's just a thing people say. Not true for me.
You had to do that. So when you said you had to do that work. Mm-hmm. You journaled, you thought about it, mm-hmm. You examined the feeling, you brought it forward, you reframed it. That took work to. So I guess I just challenge as, like, really, how long have you felt this, that you don't care what people think? Is that something you acquired through this work, and that makes you think which might make you think, well, this is the natural state for a human to be, and I feel that. Or have you always had that?
No, I've always had that. I think I went through a period of caring what people think when I was in therapy. It was the only time I cared when people thought of me, because that was an intense conditioning to care. And that was for maybe 3 years. But I absolutely did not care when I was younger. And I think that's because, quite honestly, I grew up in a house where the people who lived in the house perceived me in a way that was so distorted from what I knew to be the truth that I realized I couldn't trust other people's perceptions, at least of me. Now, there's a lot of utility in understanding other people's perceptions, because you can learn a lot about your own, say, programs or ways that you come across in the world. So it's definitely useful, but taking it to heart and thinking that that's the truth over my own experience, no. And in fact, I would say that that's universal for all of my life, that I do not take somebody else's experience over my own.
Okay, but not to do sort of a gotcha journalism here.
Sure.
But you just told me of a story mm-hmm. where you wrote down neurosurgeon mm-hmm. and went for that. It feels like that was just based on the approval of your mom. Yeah, well, I would say it's more, but it's much broader than that. Just not the approval of my mother, right? It was the approval of all of society. Didn't you want that? And didn't you sort of corrected that later in your life, or came to account for that? But don't we need the approval of our parents? Because when we're a baby, we're dependent on these folks for our food and safety. Of course. And isn't that innate? How are you different? How do you feel you're different from that? So yes, when we're children, it's a very different story. We're meant to outgrow that. And parents don't tend to teach their kids how to outgrow that, so that people remain trapped in these parent-child relationships. I would say most people play out a parent-child relationship in every relationship they're in. If you look at couples, one of them's the parent, the other one's the child. People don't learn how to outgrow that need for approval.
yeah, when we're kids, we're also, I would say, taught that, because you're right. Just like animals and small children, they do something, their parents go, "Oh, that's so great," and they smile, and the kid goes, "Oh, okay, I keep doing that." So yeah, when I'm 12, and I would say most children up until they're 18, 19, the amount of choice that we have is much less because we're still in that development stage. It's when we're an adult that we really break out of that, and ought to be breaking out of that to fly on our own. Because our parenting styles don't tend to allow for that, we keep people trapped in that dynamic their whole lives. Parent, child, parent, child. It's just not productive, and doesn't come close then to our limitless potential if you're stuck in that cycle.
So tell me more about your story when you came to grips with that summer with journaling, being a neurosurgeon. How did you reckon with that?
Oh, this is quite a long story, because it was not easy, right?
Yeah.
I came back and I said, I'm going to open up a school for women. That's what I want to do. And I want to create a space for women to be themselves and learn freely. And of course, that was met with, "What's wrong with you?" You know, "We sent you to this fancy school. You're supposed to be a neurosurgeon. What's wrong with you?" And that cultural current is strong. I'm not going to pretend that it's easy. And it's not even so much that it's approval at that point as it is just people convinced me that it was, that what I wanted to do was impossible, that it didn't make any sense, and that I couldn't do it. And I believed them because I hadn't yet broken free of a lot of that. So I worked in labs. I was doing research anyway. I was good at it. It was easy. So I kept doing lab work. And I did that for a while. I worked in labs after undergrad. Then I went to grad school for neuroscience. And in grad school, the universe basically just kicked me because it's not where I was supposed to be. Not that science isn't interesting or great for people, just it wasn't for me. And I was so bored. And the place where I was cared so much about all the things that we're talking about the status, about the money, about all of those things. And so I co-created a situation that would get me out of there. And I had to leave. And so then I drove across the country and thought, I'm going to do it now. I'm really going to do the thing I'm meant to do. And then everybody told me, well, you don't have any money. How are you going to do that? So I didn't have courage for a lot of this. It's a lot easier when you're through it to look back and see it. And that's why the work I'm doing now to me is so important, because I wish I'd had somebody who stood next to me and said, you know what, try on this other perspective, because maybe the fears you're having are actually conditioning you into behavior that isn't true for you. It took me decades to get to this place. It doesn't have to, you know?
I'm just, I got up and grabbed a book off the shelf that I've been spending time with, called Owning Your Own Shadow, Understanding the Dark Side of the Psyche by Robert Johnson. And I think you just illustrate, there's a passage in here that I believe you just sort of described to a T a real life example of this, and I was looking for it. Okay. I think one way to talk about what you're talking about is sort of we push away parts of ourselves, and like that can become what can be called a shadow part of the self. Sort of there's the public face that you present, and the attributes that people sort of say, yeah, this is working, we have a job for you with this attribute, we have want to be your husband or your wife based on these attributes you're showing up with. There's parts of ourselves that are maybe more difficult that don't fit into those boxes. And I think I know I've had things like that I pushed away. I said, I don't know what to do with this. This doesn't seem useful. It doesn't seem like my brightest star right now. That that idea you brought forward that people said no, this won't work. And just this book describes at some point in our lives, I think that really becomes a reckoning. Like you push away so much, and shadow's not a bad thing. You can't live without a shadow. It's just part of you. But it can take on so much weight and sort of darkness. I'm putting darkness in quotes because people are afraid of the dark, but there's so many wonderful things there.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point, I think, in my life, it sounds like your life, where you just had to confront this. And it says in a passage from this book says, to refuse the dark side of one's nature is to store up or accumulate the darkness. This is later expressed as a black mood, psychosomatic illness, or unconsciously inspired accidents. It says, we are presently dealing with the accumulation of a whole society that has worshipped its light side and refused the dark. And this residue appears as war, economic chaos, strikes, racial intolerance. The front page of any newspaper hurls the collective shadow at us. And I could keep going, but how does that relate to your life?
It's interesting because I think of it as almost the reverse, as what you're seeing. The mask I was wearing was really the darker side, and the light was the part I was suppressing. So it's interesting to consider the opposite perspective.
Hiding your light under a bushel
yeah.
sort of scenario.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And as you were reading that, this word came into my mind about trust, because that is one of the things that gets conditioned out of us, to trust ourselves, to know what is true for us and what our intuition is, and then to trust that. Because as I said, what you think you want oftentimes is culturally conditioned. And so understanding what's really true and trusting that. I watch a lot of parents with their children saying, be careful. Don't do that, be careful. And if you just think about those words, anytime somebody says to me, be careful, I just want to go, why don't you trust me the way that I trust myself? I know if I'm going to get hurt because I feel that. And yeah, also sometimes maybe I fall down. But you know what? Those are the opportunities where I grow and I learn something. We become so afraid of the falling down moments that we don't want to move.
Yeah.
And then we stagnate and die. I mean, that's how we die. We're meant to outgrow ourselves every single day. And not in I took a course and learned, statistics today. That is not growth. I mean, on a human level. If we don't do that, we die. So when you ask me, isn't it hard? Well, sure, but I'm not ready to die yet. I'm not ready to give up my life for the sake of security. I want to live.
I can think of times in my life, quite recently, even, where I was in a situation, and let's just say a situation I could be referring to a long-term relationship, a friendship, a job, just a dinner engagement, just a single event. In a situation such as those things, and felt like there's something I really can't decide if I want to be here. There's a lot of reasons that feel like I want to be somewhere else, but that feels hard to trust. How do I know? I mean, I've been in situations like these kinds of things, and I've wanted to be somewhere else very badly, but also didn't trust myself. Well, what makes me think that I would actually be better somewhere else? The grass is always greener. How do you know you're just not? Oh, you look like you're running away from yourself. You need to deal with your issues where you are. Don't run away from your issues. So the kind of programming the language I just used, I have used to keep me in those. I've had that running in my brain for hours a day at times, keeping me in a situation where, in retrospect, it would have been really better if I left the situation sooner.
Yeah.
But it's like it's not necessarily easy to learn that and apply it the next time.
No, it's not.
To say, I mean, I was going to hang out with a friend last week, and I canceled on him the last minute. I said, and I didn't have a reason for canceling. I said, I just really feel like I need to write this morning. I need to have my whole morning free to write. And I just think it's better if we reschedule, like, when the time's right to get together. And that felt like it's rude to not it's rude to cancel on people without at least a reason.
That is a reason.
give an excuse. I couldn't make it because, something outside of my choice. How do you encourage people to trust themselves? How do you trust yourself, Mary?
That is a good question. Part of it is because I've done so much of this work, because I have a sense of when something feels right and when it doesn't. The truth is, though, it's a continuous learning process. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm always in a place of choice. I might have a half a degree freedom more than somebody else, but I'm not. If people are 99.99% on autopilot, I might be 99.96% on autopilot. It's not like I have massive degrees of freedom, but I have a bit more, which then makes it a little bit easier to trust. And this work of questioning our behavior and understanding where it comes from, for me, was the start of it. And then once I started doing that, I noticed how things felt in my body. And that's how I gauge it. So when I'm about to do something and it settles in my head and starts ringing in my head, it's absolutely, for me, that's the right path. Like, that is totally what it is. And I know it because my heart starts singing, my head starts buzzing. It's just exactly right. When I get pain in my stomach, or sometimes I get pain in my ear, then I'll say something and my ear will click and start to hurt. When that happens, I know I've done or said something that is not in alignment with me. So my body helps tell me now where it needs to go. But again, I'm going to share a story where I didn't listen, because I think it's really important to recognize that this is a process and it takes time. And I do not want to give any sort of impression that I've mastered anything. Back in the fall, I met somebody who said they wanted to invest in creating this retreat center for kids that I'm working to create. And I, over the course of a week after that, developed this excruciating pain in some part of my abdomen that I'm not quite sure where it is. But everybody kept saying to me, no, this person's for real. They really want to invest. They really have the money. We had drawn up a term sheet. He had come to look at the property. I mean, all the things on the surface seemed exactly right. Meanwhile, I'm on the couch doubled over, wondering what is going on, thinking, okay, it can't be this because this has to be right. Everybody keeps saying it's right. So maybe it's my fear around, well, I'm running out of savings, or maybe it's, there's somebody staying with me. Maybe it's that. All these things that I'm writing about, trying to figure out. It got so bad that I went to the emergency room, and I don't go to see doctors almost ever. And I wouldn't let them give me anything, but I just wanted to make sure I wasn't dying. That's how bad the pain was.
Did they find something?
No, of course not. December 26th comes around, and I finally say to the person, I've been asking where the source of the money is for the past couple months. And finally I said, I need to know, because if I don't know where the source of the money is, I have to walk away now, because I just got into a place where it just wasn't feeling, something wasn't right.
And can I just pause here and say, it sounds like you found something. You didn't say no to the money. Mm-hmm. You said, there's a need I have that feels reasonable.
Yeah.
And feels like a rational person could really say, this is important to me.
Yes.
That, I think it sounds like your intuition was saying, just say no.
Yes.
But you found something you could say, okay, I have a question,
mm-hmm.
which maybe proved to be I'm just guessing, a breadcrumb trail. So go on.
Yeah. Well, the text I got back was to an article that I thought was a joke. It was an article about, honestly, I didn't even read it. It was something about some members of Congress got together in some secret ceremony back in the 90s to undo our entire currency, and that there was a fund set up with hundreds of billions or trillions, I don't know, whatever, of dollars. And that when this fund comes out to the world, the whole world economy is going to collapse. And then this person was going to have all this money. And it was about to happen in 5 days at the end of the year. So I wrote back, no, really though, where's the money coming from? And he wrote back that you have to have faith, believe. And it was such an incredible feeling that washed over me, because all at once I was devastated and all that tension in my stomach evaporated. No more pain. All went away, because that was the source of it. I knew in my gut, but I didn't listen because I listened to other people. And I've now had several months where I haven't been in that situation, which is fantastic, but it keeps coming back because it's when you want something, when you think you want something and you try to manipulate and control the outcome, almost always that's a position where you're not listening to yourself, you're not trusting yourself. And that's what I was doing. I felt so strongly that I needed to create this retreat center. I was willing to really sublimate myself for it to happen. And now, nope, I'm not going to do that again. It's a process.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm thinking about right now is this pain I have in my back that appears roughly between my spine and my right shoulder blade. And I have scoliosis that's pretty moderate. It's not severe, but moderate scoliosis, and some other injuries over the years. So I have back pain's part of my life, and I do things to stay loose and stretch it out. And there's things I do that help. But I also really try to tune into it emotionally when I can. Say, okay, when it comes up really strongly, try to listen to my thoughts at that time and see, is there something coming into my thoughts that might be hard for me to listen to, that I need to listen to. And I've had examples where that was really helpful. But yeah, I'm still frustrated, Allison. My back pain just doesn't go away. I'm having it today. And sometimes, and my girlfriend, Allison, also Allison, different spelling, says, you also just have this disease. You have scoliosis. This is, you might, and I guess to get to, the actual question I have is coming to mind now after all this rambling. I really just want to feel relief, like, oh, okay, I'm free of this pain. I feel like there's like some core nature of this pain that if I could just understand it, I would be free of it. And then maybe it would come and go. Maybe if it would just be like that little tick in my ear where if I started to get a hint of it in my life, I would know, oh, okay, it's this kind of thing that's coming up.
That's true.
Do you think that's possible?
Oh, absolutely.
How do I get there? Because I've done a lot of work. I'm open to this, and I've done a lot of listening to this pain, and it's taught me a lot. But it still comes back, and I'm like, what am I not hearing? How can I go deeper?
So recognizing the pattern is really important. So keeping notes of when it happens, everything that's going on, not just your thoughts, but where are you? Who are you around? What is your life situation at exactly that moment? And maybe, a little bit prior to that, because I don't know how, like my ear is immediate, but other parts of my body take some time to respond. Making note of that and journaling it will definitely help start it. And then those why questions, they go really deep. So I think if you've ever been in therapy, a therapist will always ask you, well, why is this? And then you end almost always with, oh, this childhood trauma. And then it just ends. And that's actually not the end. It keeps going. So why then So then you kind of flip it back on itself. So if you say, okay, it's because of X childhood trauma, which is almost always the source of all of these things, then you go, well, what behavior am I doing to protect myself from that trauma? Or what behavior has that trauma caused me to enact throughout my life? And you start to see, you take this big funnel and you pinpoint it down to one spot, and then you reflect it out, and it becomes this, you can't see my hands, but I'm making a cone of behaviors that are stemming from one particular thing or a couple of things. It's that process.
And the words you mentioned that I really keyed on to just now is sort of protective behaviors. So holding tension in the body is generally protective. You're bracing yourself for impact from something.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm taking away from what you're saying is, we all know we've had some childhood trauma, or if people don't want to use that word, child who wasn't perfect. You didn't have, some of the things weren't ideal for you. Knowing that is one thing. Sort of applying it to feeling better is another. And I think a clue I'm picking up here is to really look at protective behaviors. So I know I have this trauma, but what am I doing today where I'm bracing in that protective way for life events that are surrounding me now? And if I could maybe identify that and let it go today, perhaps I would feel better.
Yes. In fact, all of the behaviors that stem from it. And when you see them, this is what's amazing about shining light on something, because when you see it, it's just, oh, well, I can not do that anymore. And then it's just gone. And I can share with you an example of something that's similar. I used to have menstrual cramps that were terrible, so bad I would vomit on the first day from the pain. I was prescribed Vicodin and Oxy and all these prescription medications that I hated taking, so I wouldn't take them, but I couldn't work on the first day because I'd be throwing up. And I went to see a doctor, and they gave me birth control, which helped, but I still couldn't work on that first day without taking major pain medications for my whole life. That is not how it's supposed to go. So clearly I was holding something there. And without getting into too many of the details, I spent a lot of time working through what is at the root of that. And I now can have, it's uncomfortable, but I think it's where it is for most other people. I'm not throwing up. I don't need medication. I don't need to numb myself into a stupor for the first day. And it was amazing to me. The very first kind of chunk that fell away, that was really holding a lot of that tension for that first day. When I menstruated after that month that I kind of let that chunk go, I couldn't even believe it. I was in disbelief. My whole life had been chronic pain.
Can you, in keeping with sort of the level of detail you're providing is fine, but can you give listeners a sense of, so what kind of exercise did you do? What kind of insight did you have where you knew that, okay, this chunk has fallen away, and then you had the experience of menstruating with less pain?
I identified a source of, something that had happened to me when I was a kid, and the person who had perpetrated it. And then I spoke with that person about that experience and just spoke the words for myself that I wished I could have said when I was a kid. And that cleared it all up. And I don't know that has to be the way. There's lots of ways. If
that person is someone can relate to this experience, but that person is dead or otherwise inaccessible, or might be scary to say something to them, are there other things you would have done?
Yes. So now, if that were to happen, because there are times when I don't have the need to confront people or share this as much because I've done it now for a while, I say it aloud to get it out of me. Really all it is getting it out of me, right? I just don't want to be holding it anymore. So however I can get it out, usually it's through words. Writing isn't enough. I usually have to speak it. Sometimes I sing it. The vibration can help feel or draw it. It's got to get out though.
Yeah. The words coming to my mind right now are stop, please stop now. And I know there are memories that I have where those words as a child were frozen in
Yeah.
my throat and didn't get out of my mouth. And even just saying the words I just said out loud right now feels good. It feels like there's some part of me that yearns to, whether the body has not completed the emotion, as it were, and wants to. And I can attest to what you're saying. Listeners could try right now. Just pause the recording, and try saying out loud words to the effect of stop. You don't even have to think of an experience, but there's probably something in your life that you wanted to say stop but weren't able to, and you can feel good in your body just to say those words. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk, tell us about the Epicenter? What are you working on there? And is there any way, if someone that wants to follow you or become involved or support, is there a way you would suggest they get involved?
The Epicenter is envisioned as a retreat center for kids because, well, so much of what we're talking about is us as adults. And it seems quite obvious to me that if maybe we worked with children, we wouldn't end up as adults having these conversations. And I'm curious to know what it is that we're capable of as humans if we're not burdened with all of this and we are able to listen to who we really are and live our purpose. I often think about nature in this, and as I'm looking outside at the trees here, that pine tree didn't grow up and say, you know what, I really like the oak trees. I think I'm going to be an oak tree, and then try its whole life to be an oak tree. No, this is a beautiful pine tree, and it's being the best pine tree it can possibly be with all of its being. So are the trees next to it. They're doing everything they can. That birch tree is trying everything it can be to be the best birch tree it can be. And that's what I feel is what we're meant to be as humans.
And they're doing without thinking about it.
Right. Yeah. They just are.
You see a plant. When you see a plant, we have a puppy. You see a puppy being a puppy and just living.
Yeah.
It's not thinking about, okay, how can I be a good puppy? How can I get more approval?
Uh-huh.
And it responds to approval. With training, it's more, I would say we're really relating with each other and saying, okay, how can we be a happy family together?
Right, exactly. And that's what the trees are doing. The trees they're all talking to each other. They're all interrelated and connected. It's just, so humans, I think of, well, what if we were a garden of humans, all living our purpose, all living to our fullest potential? What could that really look like? That's what the Epicenter is. And the way that we work with kids is to give them a space where there is no judgment and there is no agenda. And that sounds very simple. It is simple. It's not easy, because as adults, we have so many agendas and so many ways that we think things should be. And creating space for kids to just be who they are and let them feel what that feels like in their bodies, to me, feels like the greatest gift to be able to give the next generation. So that's what I'm working to create. We have a website. It's betheepicenter.org, and it has dashes in between the words. So be-the-epicenter.org. And I'm hoping that there is a way actually for people to get involved more than at the moment. So at the moment, we have videos that you can watch. They're for kids, but adults enjoy them too, where we ask these open-ended questions to try to get people to shift their perspective. The first question asks, what sound does a rock make? And then we explore how one might answer that question, recognizing that there is no right answer. As in most of life, right? There is no right answer.
This is my fifth grade teacher, Jerry Cute. She was different than any other teacher I had, and her philosophy in the classroom is ask questions that she doesn't know the answer to, or that no one might know the answer to, And she said, well, of course, why would you do anything else? Anything else is boring.
Right, exactly. That's exactly true. And it's so great because it puts you in touch with really experiencing the world for yourself, not trying to find the answer that everybody else says is it, but what sound does a rock make to you? And then I recently published a book that's also a children's book, and it's a coloring book, and adults also seem to enjoy it. It's called The Mistake, and that is also available on the website. And I'm hoping that we're going to be having a fundraising campaign soon that should be really fun, that's based on this book. So I guess stay tuned for that. But you can always sign up for the newsletter and write to me if you're interested in it, because I'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in this kind of work, we're going to need guides to work with the kids and people who understand these things about the world are the people who are meant to be the guides for the Epicenter. So if you're interested in the work, just write to me. It'd be great to hear from you. Do you
want to give your email address here? Is it go through the website?
It's on the website. The general one is just info@b-the-epicenter.org. And B is B-E, boy, elephant.
Yeah. And I think geographical context helps. We're talking here in Vermont on Quill Nook Farm. You're based in Santa Cruz. Mm-hmm. You're not, California is an area you have in mind for this, but you're not tied to that.
Oh, no. Yeah, it could be anywhere. Yeah, this kind of work can be done anywhere.
So there's another question that's just coming to mind as far as what we've talked about with emotional processing and intelligence. I'm thinking of people in my life that have kind of a different kind of issue right now emotionally, where they're depressed. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like a non-feeling, just not feeling that joy, that happiness, interest in things. And this can feel, and I've been there, mm-hmm. And this can feel very powerless and unending, because you're sort of like looking for something, and then there's often turn towards medication to sort of give that lift out, which is very understandable to feel kind of stuck and to want to get lifted out of it, and that can be very helpful for many people. Do you have any other? Just feel moved to ask you how you think about depression, or any suggestions you have for this kind of talking with yourself about it.
That's a good question. I don't think I know anybody who hasn't experienced depression in their lives at some point. For me, and this is only I can say for me, the things that have helped the most are, one, changing the scenery, because the habits that we form are not just behavioral, right? They're mental habits too. So if you're in a place that has you feeling a certain way, that can immediately trigger a resonance to a same mental state. The same way a place that you love that's joyous can trigger that mental state. So for me, I usually force myself to move outside of where I am and spend a significant amount of time elsewhere. And then I write about where this might be coming from. And almost always it's this, exactly like you're saying, this powerless feeling. And so why am I experiencing powerlessness around what? And how did that situation come to be? And then, okay, what choice can I make that's going to be different? This is really difficult, though, in that mental state. It's really difficult because everything is kind of forcing you kind of to the bottom, right? And
there's a hopelessness.
Yes, exactly.
You can imagine yourself doing something else and being happier, mm-hmm. but then you're like, well, how am I going to get there? Right. That's not realistic.
Exactly.
And anyway, I don't really like that. I don't really even feel that drawn to that thing anyway. Forget it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can be very, very difficult. There are two maybe things about the world that I find are useful in this situation that I've come to see for myself. So the first is the perspective that There is no separation between us and everything else. And this is just a perspective. And when I say perspective, I mean it's not right or wrong or true or false. It's just a way of seeing things that may or may not be useful. This perspective of me and you are the same thing, with me and the tree, there is no separation. In fact, I could dissolve myself right now into a space where I feel no separation at all. Suddenly makes it clear that everything around us is just mirroring back to ourselves. It's all the same thing. So when I get to a place where I'm feeling really, really down, I really do look to my surroundings to go, well, what is reflecting that back at me? Because it's not just in me, it's in everything around me. So where is this coming from? How am I contributing to it? But how is the environment contributing to it? How are we co-creating this situation together? That's one.
Is it like sort of what is it in my environment or the people around me, situations that are reflecting or amplifying that depression that you're talking about?
Yes. And then I also find it useful to have a guide, to have somebody who's not experiencing that, to reflect something different. Because, I mean, that's really what a new space can do, right? It just reflects something new to you. A person can do that too. Somebody who's in a different space, who's not trying to tell you how to be, or, because again, like some of that therapy, some of the ways that people try to counsel others just push them into another space, right? But can create an open space and just reflect back. Here's another way of being.
I'm having this random movie coming to mind with Helen Hunt from 2014. The movie is called Ride. And she's, as I recall, basically a woman who's a mom. She's caught up in the rat race, but through some life circumstances ends up taking a surfing lesson and just finds her body occupying a whole different set of emotions and places and learnings as a result of that experience.
And it's sort of one of these, like, you know, it's a surfing teacher, but he's really a life teacher. So, you know, life isn't always like the movie, but I think when I'm hearing you say sort of finding a guide, it may not be literally like going to someone, going to a therapist, going to friends saying, teach me, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi, why am I depressed? But maybe just starting something new, seeking out a little bit of a different situation. And then maybe there's someone in there who has something to teach you, not just about surfing, but about life.
Yeah, about getting out of yourself. There are a couple people that I work with regularly. So I do also, with this work with the Epicenter, I do work one-on-one with people and guide them. And there are a few people I've worked with who have been severely depressed, suicidal, you know, people who are on medication, all those sorts of things. And so what I do with them is a lot of this kind of work of, okay, let's question and get to the root of it, but then let's reflect something new to you so that you can see something different. Because it's all about, our minds create our reality, right? So if we're stuck in this one spot in our mind, that is the reality that we experience. So being able to just experience a different reality, move our minds to a different place, can make all the difference for people. That's not going to say it's a panacea, that it's a cure-all. Right? I don't want to say any of those things. There's real work that has to be done in order to come out of those really dark holes.
I think a lesson, the work works.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I think, and I think the work has gotten better. The tools, truly, I want to tell people the tools have gotten better. Like when I first had mental health issues in the 90s when I was a teenager, I was frankly not given very good tools to help with that. That just didn't. And that led me to be hopeless. Oh my gosh, I've tried this and that medication. I've tried this and that therapist. None of it's helping. Led to maybe a belief, oh, there's something wrong with me.
Right.
Reinforces, oh, there's something wrong with me if these tools aren't working. But I want people to know, and I think you're reflecting this, and I can personally reflect this, that there are tools that work. And the tools you might have tried so far aren't the good ones necessarily. And it's another good place to listen to your intuition. There's no therapy approach, there's no medication, there's no journal entry that works for everybody. We all have to find what works for us, but there are many things out there that do help, and doing the work does lead to improvement in life and well-being. I believe.
Yeah, it absolutely it does. Yeah.
Allison Paradise, thank you for coming on this podcast. I think we could talk for quite a bit longer, but I want to keep it somewhat digestible for people today. So I hope this is the first of more conversations with you. Just want to invite anyone listening to send us comments in wherever this is posted. You can put comments on my website. There's my email on the socials, Tristan Roberts, Allison Paradise, her website, the-epicenter-org.org, excuse me. And send us your questions, send us your difficult emotional, physical life situations to challenge these points of view. Because I think Allison and I share in common, is it fair to say, view that your life can improve, you can grow, you can heal from the most difficult traumas.
Yes.
And we don't know everything about it, but we have some ideas. We know people that have ideas, and we want to be challenged and tested by you.
Oh, absolutely. I do not want to be stagnant. So the more, if you have another perspective, I want to hear it for sure. Because the more perspectives I hear, the closer I get to the truth, right?
We think so.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
You're welcome. What's it like you've been on the farm, flew out from California just to spend a couple nights and a day here? What's it been like?
How do I even sum that up? Well, for me, it's perfect. It's exactly where I knew I needed to be. I had this feeling. I so appreciate your accommodating my saying, hey, can I come out here with very short notice? And yeah, it's perfect. That's my own personal experience of it. If I were to talk about it from what I would tell somebody else about me coming out here, is that it's a space where, because there's no distractions and because you're surrounded by nature, it's a lot easier to find your own resonance. So if this is work that you're interested in doing, a place like this place in particular, is a great place to do that kind of work.
I'm glad to hear that has been the case for you, Allison. I feel that way here, and it gives a lot of meaning to me that other people could come and just have that experience, because for them to have that is wonderful. So thank you for coming, and that's all for today. Anything else to add?
No, thank you for listening.